and welcome to At the Roundtable. I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. It's my privilege to visit with you today, come into your home today and speak with Senator Roland Pederson, representing District 19. Senator, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
I think I saw you last week and the week before that, but it's good that we crossed paths. Just wanted to remind our viewers that Senator Pederson just survived your first your first venture, first term, not term, you still have more term.
1 year.
But 1 year, you survived the first year, but he represents Alfalfa, Grant, Garfield, and Kay counties. He's a second generation farmer and educator. He has 2 degrees, a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, from Northwestern and Alva. And when he was very active in his campaign, his interests were in, of course, education, small business, agriculture, and also infrastructure. And also, Senator Pederson has served in the Air Force Reserves, and currently at the legislature you will find him serving on a few committees. Those are the Agriculture Committee, Appropriations, Energy, Retirement, and Insurance Committees. So again, welcome Senator Pederson to the Roundtable today. It's good to have you. I know you have a hectic schedule, even though you're not in meetings every day at the Capitol. You're back to the real world, if you will, but you still have a busy schedule, and I appreciate your time today. So question number 1, first year at the Capitol as Senator representing here in District 19, what did you learn about yourself and what did you learn about the legislature in your first year?
Well, Steve, as far as what I learned about myself is I learned that I didn't know a lot about what goes on in Oklahoma. There's just a lot of things that come at you, and you try to comprehend some of those things. And after about the second or third week, I thought, I'm not going to be able to get all this in 1 week or 2. It's going to take a while. And so I just kind of sat back and tried to learn as much as I could. And like I said, the longer things went on, I realized that I knew less than what I really thought I would. But it was a very learning experience. I said that I probably studied harder, I read more than what I ever did when I was in college. So just people expect you to know things, but at the same time they're patient with you, realizing that it's your first term and you got a lot to learn.
I guess time management kind of came into play in your role, because here you're trying to be a part of committee meetings, and then actually being on the Senate floor and with debate, but yet people come to see you. And so here you're being, juggling around. So I guess time management 101 really came into play.
That's for sure. I have a very good executive assistant that helps schedule things and tries not to pile everything up on me, realizing I know, some people that are going to be coming by, and so I can kind of research a little bit about who they are and what they're there for. But just on the floor, when you're in the middle of trying to discuss something, well, there's, you get a page brings you a note, and you got to drop and everything, go see what they want, and then try to get refocused back on whatever you're doing back on the floor. So yes, time management and what you do of an evenings. There's always different events that you want to go to, and just trying to learn everything as much as you could. That was probably one of the most difficult things I've done.
Have you had a chance to kind of catch your breath now since, I guess it was the end of May when the session completed?
As far as the legislative part goes, yes, catch my breath.
Because the real life part really goes on.
Yeah, exactly. We ended session on 1 week, and we began harvesting the
Right.
next week. But you really refocus your whole line of thinking for at least a couple weeks out there on the combine and trying to get harvest done. So, and that's good, because at that point in time, you are on overload as far as what you've had at the legislature,
Sure.
especially this year, where everything was new. And several people told me that if you survive this year, you'll survive any time, any session to follow.
Well, congratulations on surviving. I appreciate you being here with us at the Roundtable today. Well, here you first year on the job, facing nearly a $1 billion deficit, And then on the last day of the 2017 session, approved a $6.8 billion budget. So in your opinion, and remember, we just have a few minutes today. No. What was the highlight of the session for you? We'll talk about the other side, the highlight, successes, if you will.
The highlight, well, our first challenge was to get a real ID bill passed. And that was first and foremost is what Governor Fallin wanted us to do. And so that was accomplished early on.
Senator, excuse me, people have heard that term, real ID. Folks here at Vance Air Force Base and here in Enid, Oklahoma, we hear the term quite often, real ID. Explain to our viewers in layman's terms what the real ID is.
You know, exactly how it's different than from a normal ID. You can still get regular ID or you can get real ID. I can't really, but it's what you can do with those real ID identification.
They kind of open more doors for you to get into other doors.
Exactly, all federal offices, bases, and those kinds of things. And it just has more information about you and more makes things more secure. That's what it's all about, trying to secure. And keep you safe. And real ID is just another step up in order to make that happen. Because when you visit those facilities, there's people out there that really you don't want in those places. And if they don't have the proper ID, if they can't identify themselves as what they stand for and who they are, why they really probably don't need to be there. Some people see that as infringement upon your rights as a citizen, but I view it as a safety measure, and I think people want to feel like they're safe.
Sure. And as reluctant as we can be, as I can be, I have to realize we're in a different world, or we're in different times. It's not the 50s and 60s and 70s anymore, Steve. It's a different time, and so the expectations and the level of security, and maybe infringing a little bit more on my privacy, but we live in a different world.
Our freedom has really eroded in the last 10, 15 years.
So besides the real ID passage, what other successes would you frame in the 2017 legislature?
Well, the fact that we did fill a $1 billion hole, we thought. I think those measures that we passed, we had advice that they would pass muster with the Supreme Court. It wasn't just a whim that we did that with, but it's very difficult to raise taxes in Oklahoma with the passage of State Question 640s back 20 years ago. It takes 75% vote of the House and of the legislature, I should say, and it's very difficult to do that. So there are several things that are tax rebates, tax incentives, those kind of things that can be done away with. And so, we tried some of those that would be take just 50% vote to reduce a tax or reduce the restrictions on certain exemptions, I should say. And so those are the things that we tried to do, and we were successfully done some of them, I think. And but as far as the fact that a $1 billion hole, that's a lot of money. And I think we tried to fill that responsibly, and it remains to be seen how that all is going to play out since it was struck down. But that was a highlight. And
if we, thank you, and if we apply that to our personal lives, well, what in the world could we do if we needed to fill this gap in our personal finances? You won't necessarily be able to raise any taxes or anything, but you're thinking, okay, I've got to spend less here, and move it over here. So that is quite a challenge. Okay, on the other side of the coin, there had to be some frustrations, maybe progress. The progressive wheel moved real slow. Progress didn't go as fast as you'd like. Was there anything left undone, in your opinion, that was near and dear to you?
When I ran on education. Sure. That's one of my backgrounds.
Sure.
My family has been involved in education for many years, and I think we failed our teachers in getting them a raise. I think that's something that really has a lot of political will. It's just where do you get the money to do it whenever you start out with a $1 billion hole. And in relationship to the education part, retirees, I really feel for retired educators. especially those that retired several years ago with a lower salary, and now with health care that's needed, they're in a bind, and they served their communities well, being an educator, and I would like to see more happen in that part of the state legislature.
Well, certainly education was part of the news, or the topic on the news for the 2017 legislative session. Was there anything else that didn't happen? Maybe it wasn't near the disappointment to you, but it was something that it just never picked up enough steam to get going that you wanted done?
Well, Steve, you realize those things when things are going on. This legislature's season is a little bit cold for me right now. I can't really recall any other item that really jumps out at me as far as what I was disappointed. I know there were some disappointments along the way.
Sure.
I mean, education seemed like this kind of jumps at me as I really wish we could have done more there.
I understand. My special guest today at the Roundtable, Senator Roland Pederson, representing District 19, which includes the counties Alfalfa, Grant, Garfield, and Kay counties. And again, as we mentioned earlier at the outset, Senator Pederson is a second-generation farmer and educator, and so you can understand why agriculture and education is top of his list. And we'll have more with Senator Pederson at the Roundtable right after this. Thank you for staying with us at the Roundtable today, and my very special guest, Senator representing District 19, Roland Pederson. Roland, can I call you Roland, or is it Senator?
Yeah,
what can I get away
Roland's
with?
fine. Roland's fine.
Now, off camera, you mentioned just kind of the workload. There were so many things that were new. This was your first term, and this was your first year, and you've got that behind you. But you said something that there was this volume of bills that were introduced. Was it 2,000 or 2,500 or something? And it's almost like when somebody says there's 2,000 of anything introduced, I'm thinking, there's 2,000 documents that I've got to consider or read or whatever. Was that another piece of this? Wow, I had no idea that much legislation was taking place here in Oklahoma City. Tell us about the volume of bills.
That's exactly right, Steve. There was 2,460 bills that were introduced and assigned to different committees, and they either got to work themselves, and that's actually on both sides of the legislature. They've got to work themselves through committees, and they got to get out of the hands of the chairman to begin with. That's their first hurdle, and then they get heard by the committee, and it's either up or down in the committee. And then it gets moved to the floor, and that process it takes a while to do all that. So you have committee meetings. The first 6 to 8 weeks of legislature, you're in a committee meeting. I was on 3 different committees, and we met. Some of those met each day. There was 2 or 3 meetings every day, and out of those. All those bills, there were 197, I think, passed out of the Senate onto the floor, 196 that were passed out of the House, and then they were signed into law by the governor. She ended up and vetoed, I think it was 17 of them, and then there was a chance to override those vetoes, and that if they failed, then they were considered to be a veto. So. That's just and of those 2,460 bills, I got about 400 out of the way, but there's still 2,000 bills laying there to be considered for the last half of the 56th session of the legislature. So there'll be plenty of work to do. Again, bills that either didn't get heard or they got turned down because there wasn't enough information about them or what. But they'll be up to be considered again. So. There'll be plenty of work to do.
Senator, let's shift gears a little bit on our topic, and let's talk a little bit about term limits. I've never served in the legislature at all, but I've been at the Capitol many times, and I have visited with different congressional leaders, if you will, senators and representatives, sharing my views on certain things. And there was a comfort for me knowing if I was going to Senator Barrington at the time, who had been there for quite some time. He kind of knew the ropes, and he knew me and things of this nature. There was something to be said about these long-term relationships. And off camera a few moments ago, you mentioned something about term limits that, there's going to be a lot of new faces in the legislature. Why don't you address that about term limits for us?
Well, in the Senate, I'll just kind of speak from the Senate
Sure.
side because that's what I know the most about. There were 13 of us that were elected in a 48-member body. So, and during the session, we had 3 resignations, and so those are to be reconsidered in those precinct or those areas, and there'll be new senators elected there. So, at the beginning of the next session, and this won't all take place. There's sometime during the session next fall and next spring, there will be a third of us will be senators with less than a year's experience or less, and that's a third of the Senate. And that in itself, term limits sound good, and I think they do bring new ideas, but there's a pretty steep learning curve that you're really reluctant to really get too far out on a limb the first year or two till you've actually established. And you can't, without establishing some kind of relationships, it's really difficult to get anything through.
Sure.
You want done.
So it's a real challenge, or the real balancing act of someone with numerous years in the legislature versus just that first year. Well, let's talk about some topics closer to home. If you drive along 412 in northwestern Oklahoma, or 81, or any really major thoroughfare here in northwest Oklahoma, you can continue to see wind farms come up. And we attended just recently, visited with you at the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission, had a press conference in regard to the impact that aerospace has in Altus and in Tinker in Oklahoma City and Vance and here in Enid and things of this nature. The aerospace industry is huge, with American Airlines maintenance facility in Tulsa and also Oklahoma City. Aerospace is big business in Oklahoma, but also we notice these wind farms that are popping up wherever the wind blows, and the wind comes sweeping down the plains here in Oklahoma. Talk a little bit about the challenges that maybe the legislature will be facing to enhance aerospace, because we're training pilots here in Enid. We got to continue to do so, but yet there's opportunity for wind energy. So kind of share your thoughts on that, if you would, please.
Well, Steve, Senate District 19 is kind of unique in both of those areas, in the fact that we have rising wind generation capabilities coming all the time. This happens to be a very good corridor for wind, and it's very popular in this area. In the same sense, we have Vance Air Force Base, and that's very important to Enid and the surrounding communities, the impact that they make. And to be able for them to coexist, I think it's possible. But I'm going to tell you that wind is not the most popular industry in the state of Oklahoma. We like it here in Enid, in my district, because it's brought a lot of jobs. It's brought a lot of ad valorem tax base to different school areas. And but we're going to have to figure out a way to coexist with Vance Air Force Base. And I think the things are there in place. There's siting groups that you can't just put one of them anywhere without some kind of a pass from the Aeronautical Administration. But for them to be able to coexist, it's going to take some cooperation on both parts. But I think it's doable.
And it's good to know that there are already things that have been in place that protect airspace for the pilots taking off, landing, turning, doing everything they need to do. And as you said, yes, this is near and dear to us here in Enid, Oklahoma, but it also impacts the folks down at Altus, because we do have people, after they graduate from Vance, if you will, then they go to Altus to learn to fly something else. So it's not just an Enid or a Vance, it is an Oklahoma challenge. And I agree with you that we have the pieces in place to make sure that we have the economic development growth for the wind farms, but also protect what we have in place. Well, we could, I know you have a busy schedule today, but we could talk a lot more. But as we close the interview out, Senator, I'd like to give you just the opportunity to speak to the folks here at home and just share what's on your heart. And so here's that opportunity to do so. I don't know I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but here's your chance.
Thank you. Well, I just want to tell the local people and in this district especially, thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to serve you as your senator. Get right in a minute. It's been like I said, it's been a real learning experience, and I know a year ago at this time we were working very hard. In fact, I'm thinking that maybe a year ago today might have been the runoff election, and I knocked on a lot of doors, and I know we talked a lot about Vance Air Force Base, and I've told several people that I don't think I knocked on hardly any door, but that there wasn't an airplane that flew over headed to land or take off out at Vance. But again, I just really appreciate the opportunity to serve. Thank you for your patience this past year. There have been several groups from Enid, the city of Enid, along with several people within the district that made visits down there. I want to let you know that you're always welcome. The door is open at all times, and I will listen to your concerns. And Steve, thanks for having me here today.
It's my pleasure. And our closing thought is, Senator, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you in your office there in Oklahoma City? You said you have an assistant that's really very helpful. Is it best to contact that individual in Oklahoma City and they can set up the appointment, or what do you recommend?
The best way to get a hold of me is be sure you go through my executive assistant, because that way it gets on my calendar, okay, and we can schedule things that way. I get a call and I'm out on the tractor or something like that, and I'm busy working with cattle or whatever. I might remember it until I have time to put it on the calendar, and then I'll forget exactly what it was. So my email is peterson@oksenate.gov, and you can get me there.
Very good. And we'll have that information on the screen so people will be able to write that down. Senator, appreciate your time today. It's always good visiting with you. I always enjoy our conversation. And well, first year behind you, so you're an old pro now, and then you're on your second year. So just keep in mind, here at the Enid Television Network studio, you're always welcome. So if there's a topic that comes up that we need to spread the word on to folks here in Enid, Northwest Oklahoma, come back to us, and we'll set at the round table again and discuss that topic. So thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today at the round table. Special guest, District 19 Senator Roland Pederson, representing Alfalfa, Grant, Garfield, and also Kay counties. Until next time, I'm Steve Kime. Make it a great day.